So welcome today to our final QuickBooks session with our QuickBooks expert, Karen Magee. And Karen is going to answer questions and talk about some extra features today that QuickBooks offers that people may not know about. So without further ado, Karen Magee.
It's good to be back. Today we're going to just go over a few things, how to do some advanced reporting and how to export some reports to Excel so we can do additional editing if we want to do that, and some shortcuts and some other editing that we may or may not know about. I know the first time we did how to create a new company and how to enter vendors and how to enter customers and how to enter all that. But now that I have my laptop hooked up, I figured I can show you. Once you open up QuickBooks, if you come down here to create a new company, you can go through all of the questions and everything. And it's, I guess you can't really see that much. If you just hit Express Start, it helps you and it goes through everything for you. So you can see exactly what it is that you need to enter.
So can I ask the question, how many companies can you set up on your one QuickBooks software?
You can set up as many companies as you want on your one QuickBooks software. And as you can see here, when you open up your QuickBooks, you select what company it is that you want to open. But you can have as many in there as you want.
So if I have the software downloaded to my laptop and it was downloaded for a nonprofit organization that I was serving with,
Mm-hmm.
I can actually create some other companies for myself on that.
I have more than 50 on mine.
Okay.
So we're going to go to the company that's already open. And this is a sample company. So let's say that we wanted to add a new vendor because we have a new bill that we want to pay. There's two ways to do it. You can either, like I did here, you can either come here to this little tab here that says vendors, and it brings up all of your vendors. And you can go up here to new vendor. And you can either add one at a time, or you can add a bunch of them if you have, an Excel list and you just want to do a data entry. And these are on the slides from the first one. But here's where you enter the name and if you have an opening balance and all of their information right here. The one thing that you have to remember to do, go to tax settings and check the vendor eligible for 1099. Otherwise, when you come to the end of the year and you go to do your 1099s, you're going to be looking through all of your papers. And that really is very time consuming, not that I know that or anything firsthand.
Okay, there's another question. So, but if it's a company
Mm-hmm.
that has their own business, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak, I've had, like, the plumber here.
Okay.
They tell me that they don't really need 1099 because they are a limited liability corporation.
If they're LLC, they get a 1099.
If they're a sole proprietor, they get a 1099.
Sole proprietor, partnership, LLC, they get a 1099. Incorporated, they don't need a 1099. You can send it to them. You can always send it to them. They won't do anything with it. But the only time they're sole proprietor, partnership, and LLC, they get a 1099.
Okay. So while I have you on all this, so you're on the tax settings, and you might get to this later, but I made the mistake of creating an invoice in the nonprofit organization
Mm-hmm.
and sending it to someone because they kept losing their statements. So they asked me to create one, and it was easy to find one in there and create it.
Mm-hmm.
However, when I credited the money, I must have done something wrong because it kept showing up on the balance sheet as an account receivable.
Okay. What you can do for that.
And if you need to go through this and then answer that question.
Oh, no, that's okay. That's okay. If you come up to edit and you come down to find, I use advanced. Not because I'm advanced, but because it's easier for me. And you come down to the filter and you go to amount. And you can look for that amount here. If it was, $1,200 or something like that. You can find that payment And first of all, make sure that you applied the payment to the right customer. And second, make sure that if you did apply it to the right customer, make sure that you actually checked it off on the received payments. Make sure that you actually checked that invoice off. If you just did it as a deposit, it won't apply itself to that invoice. You have to receive payments from the client.
I did it as a deposit from the client.
Okay, so you went like up here to banking and then make deposits,
Yes.
and you put it on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, then you either need to delete the deposit and do it this way, where you go to customers and receive payments. So it comes up on this screen, and then, no, this one has, there's an invoice. You have to receive it through this screen here. You have to receive it through the screen here in order for it to apply itself to that invoice. So you'll either have to, like I said, either delete that deposit and do it this way, or delete the invoice.
Okay, so the deposit then isn't going to be right, or the check that I'm depositing in their name isn't going to, you know what I'm saying? If I delete that deposit, then that $50.
Yeah, well here, okay, so here's the $50, and we're gonna say we received, and it was check number 1, 2, 3, 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I just received that money. And then what you do is you come up here and you go to banking, and you hit make deposits. And usually, it's because I had it open, it comes up with that check that we just received, and you click on that, and then you hit OK, and there's your deposit.
Okay.
So you still deposit it, but you have to receive the payment from the customer first to apply it against that invoice.
Okay, so then if I have another bunch of names on there
Yeah,
that
you
I
can
didn't
just,
invoice,
yeah,
I can add them to this deposit?
Yeah,
So
you can do it either way. So if you have, 5 checks from 5 different people, and 3 of them are payments on invoices, and 2 of them are, if you're a nonprofit, they could be donations or something like that. You go ahead and you receive those 3 invoices, those 3 payments on the invoices. You come to this screen, and it lists, you get this screen again. So you pull those 3 checks that you're going to deposit at the same time. And then you just add those 2 other lines saying that they are, whatever, you can add lines to this. So if it's, a donation or anything, you can add whatever you want to this.
Okay, then and just tell me one more time, that tab is which one?
There's a couple of ways you can get here. You can either go to banking and come down to make deposits.
Okay.
Or if you're here on the home screen, it's this one right here where it says record deposits under the banking tab.
Okay. But it'll pop up if you've credited the invoice, it'll be on that record deposit.
Yeah, and if it doesn't come up because you're already in here or something like that, all you hit is payments. And these are all of the payments that you've received but not yet deposited. They're in your undeposited funds account. So, and this is where if you take credit cards, this is where those payments show up as well.
Okay. I might have to work with that a little bit later. You might get a phone call. Jennifer makes our invoices, and then I do all the deposits, so I wind up entering credit cards differently so that the deposits that we have on file here match the bank statement.
Right.
But I felt like there was a better way to do the invoicing, but we've never done it through QuickBooks.
You can do the invoicing through QuickBooks, and actually if you're doing recurring invoices, a recurring invoice is one that you send out every month. I do recurring invoices. I have a rental business, and so on the first of every month for the corporate clients that I have, I send them, and they want an invoice, and you can set QuickBooks up to generate those invoices automatically for you. The only problem is you have to go in there and change the dates on it, but it actually makes the invoices for you, so you don't forget to make an invoice. Not that I would ever do that or anything, but.
Well, if their rate is the same every month.
Yeah, the rate is the same every month, but like on mine, in the description, I'll say, rent for the month of January 2015. Right. And then if that one's memorized, it pulls the same exact description. So you can just say, monthly rent, and, you know, do it that way.
Right.
So here we have, I don't know how to make this bigger or smaller because my screen, I have to change the resolution, I guess. But if you hit Control M, it'll memorize this transaction, and you can tell it, you know, add it to my reminders list so it reminds you to enter it, so it doesn't enter it automatically. You can say do not remind me, so it's just on the list. Automate transaction entry, and this is the one where if you want it to do this, it just does it automatically for you. And then you pick how often you want it to do. So we're going to do monthly. The next date we'll just do on the 1st. So, you know, it says, you know, that if you do it monthly, on the 1st it does the invoice on the 1st of every month. Number remaining, that's if someone has a 12-month lease, or, you know, they have a contract with you with 36 months. So, you know, you put that in, you know, 35 times, so you don't, you know, you have the number in there. And then days in advance to enter. If you want to send them out a couple of days before the invoice date. So even though the invoice date is the 1st, usually your rent or, you know, the payment is actually due on the 1st. So if you want to do it 10 days in advance, you know, you just put, you know, 10 days that you want to enter in advance, and then it'll enter it, you know, the 20th before the 1st.
It's a shame it won't go ahead and change the dates for you automatically. You could just say at the 1st of every month.
Yeah, it does it on, the dates will be the 1st of every month, so let's see. So we just memorized this transaction. To go to your memorized transactions, to find the ones that you have memorized, you go up to lists, and you come down here to memorize transaction list. In here, they already have some in here. You see the next date is going to be the 1st of 2019. And this is that invoice that we just did. There's a couple of things that you can do right now. You can go down here to enter transaction, and it'll just enter it for you, and then it'll change this next date. It'll go ahead see, we just entered that one, and now it changed the next date, so it won't duplicate. So if you want to do it yourself instead of waiting for the memorized transaction list to do it for you, if you know, say you have it set for the 1st, but it's the 31st and you're ready to do it, you know, you can go ahead and enter them, and then it doesn't, again, do it on the 1st because you took it off of the list. The other thing that you can do here is you can edit the transaction from here. If you right-click on this, and usually on any reports or anything, if you right-click, you get these little, this little screen here that shows you what you can and can't do with those transactions, and that changes depending on what screen you're on. But you can edit it, or you can delete it, or again, you can enter it here. This one is, if you have a whole list of things that you want to enter at one time, and you don't really want to go through it every single time, you can create a group. Like this one here has monthly bills, monthly close. If you have, you know, if you're closing your month every month, this helps you do that. Or your monthly depreciation, if you want to book your depreciation every month. But you can also enter these in a group so that you have different groups, and then the groups act as the parent for each transaction, so you can have as many transactions as you want in each group. And then you can enter the group, you set that as, let's see here.
But would the group have to be billed the same amount?
No, the group is just the parent. So if you have both invoices that you want to memorize, and you also have bills, say you have monthly bills that you want to memorize because you have you know, your internet, you know that your internet is the same every month, or you know that your telephone bill is the same every month. So you have both your bills and your invoices, but you don't want them all just listed as one big list. You want to kind of clean it up a little bit. You can put your invoices as a group and then your bills as a group, and then you can enter them that way as well. So, and we already did this, you know, this is how you automate it, and then you know, we've been through that screen already too. So that's how you memorize a transaction, and I use that all the time. All the time. Almost every single person that I do, I use memorized transactions. I even do it for my personal because I put my personal stuff in QuickBooks.
Well, that takes some of the burden off of you.
Yeah,
From a management standpoint.
It does. It does. So, the next thing that we're going to talk about is reports. I know we've talked about reports before. The most common one is your profit and loss. We're going to use your balance sheet because my screen is very small. So this is our balance sheet. There's a couple of different things in QuickBooks 2015, and I know they're about to come out with 2016 this fall. So if you need to get into QuickBooks, go ahead and get 2015 when it goes on clearance when they come out with 2016. They're not really doing a huge update this year, so you're not really going to be missing out on any features, and you'll get it at a lot better price. And I think it's 5 years that they support it. So if anything happens, I've been using 15 now for a year, and I haven't had any problems with it. So, but there's a couple of different things that we can do on this. We talked about customizing reports before. This is the button here, and this is how we can change everything. This is where you change, even if you are an accrual company, but you want to run your report on cash, this is where you toggle that, or vice versa. This is where you toggle that. It doesn't matter if you are an accrual or a cash company, you can run the reports either way. The other thing that you can do here is if you're running something like a trial balance that has a lot of zeros on it, if you come down here to this advanced button, you can say that you only want to show the rows or the columns that have non-zeros, so you don't end up with a report that has, just zeros all over the place. It'll only show the rows or columns that have zeros. The other thing that you can do here, as you can see, we have previous period, previous year, the percent row and the percent column. And you really just kind of play around with that and see what each of them do, and see if you want that. If we do the previous period on here and the dollar change, it'll show us where we were last year. This is just the regular balance sheet that we pulled. It shows us where we were last year, and it shows us the change between the 2 years, and that you get under Customized Report. The other thing that you can do is you can filter. So if you are using classes, I know we talked about classes before, and they're very confusing. So if we do classes and you only want to report, let's say we only want to report on this grant 1, 2, 3 that we have. We don't care about any of our other funds. We only want to know this grant. Okay, and this is the report that only has those grant numbers in there. So that's how you get those reports. I know we've been over that before too, but I didn't have my computer, so it didn't really help. But that's how you get the reports that only have that specific grant number in there. Oops. If we want to change anything on the actual report, if we want to change the way that any of this part looks, you come up here to header and footer. So let's say we, instead of a balance sheet, we just want to call it, it's not income statement, we just, so I didn't really change it too much, but you can change this here, and this is how you change all of this up here. You can take this off if you want, here under header and footer. You take off the date prepared, you take off the time prepared, and that will remove that if you don't want any of that up there. If you, instead of consulting business, if you want this to say Jan's super awesome company, you can change it to say whatever it is that you want there. And then the fonts and the numbers, here's where you change your fonts if you want things larger or smaller. There is another way to do this as well. If you come here and you right click on this, you can change the font here as well. So, and we'll change all the related fonts. So you can change the fonts there too. And if you wanted to, say you did all these changes to this balance sheet, and this is just the regular balance sheet that we pulled, that's just the automatic balance sheet that comes when you go to reports balance sheet, and you made all these changes and everything, if you want to keep this report, because this is the report you like the way that everything looks on here, you're going to run it all the time, all you do is you come up here and hit memorize. And we're going to call this Jan's balance sheet. And we'll hit OK. And now, to find this again, so let's say it's the next month and we want to run this balance sheet again. You come up to reports and you go to memorize reports, and it's right here. This is the one we just memorized, and there's all the changes that we made. They're all still there. So all you have to do is change the dates or whatever else that you want to do. Now let's say that we want to change something else. Let's say we decided the next month that we don't really like this font. We can change the font again or do whatever else that you want to do. If you hit memorize, you have your choice. You can replace the one that you already had memorized, which will do exactly what that means. It just replaces it. Or you can create a new one. So we'll say Jan's So we just memorized a new one. And again, we're going to come to the memorized reports. Here's the old one that we memorized the first time. And then here's the new one that we made changes to and then memorized again. So that's how you get to your memorized transactions, and that's why you would save a memorized transaction. I actually use more memorized transactions than I do the regular, or I use more memorized reports than I do the regular reports over here, because, I mean, these are really good and you use them, but sometimes you want reports that are just so specific to what it is that you want to do. So most of the reports that I do are actually memorized. That doesn't mean that it's right or wrong, it's just what I do.
So on budgets and forecasts, if you do budget versus actual.
Your budget versus actual is going to be, well, I don't know if we have a budget in here. To enter, I don't think we've talked about budgets. That's a great question. To enter a budget, you come up in, nonprofits, or if you're just a regular company but you have a grant, you probably want to do a budget for that because you probably have a budget for that. So what you do is you come up to company and you come to planning and budgeting and you go set up budgets. There's a couple of different ways that you can do a budget. Oh, we have one in here. That's great. Perfect. Just keep in mind, number one, it's going to have your entire chart of accounts in here. So if you have a very lengthy chart of accounts, it might take a little bit longer. Even if you only use some of them, that's okay. But your entire chart of accounts are going to be in here. If you have an account on your budget that's not on your chart of accounts, make sure you add it to the chart of accounts before you come to enter the budget, because if you find an account that you need to add to the chart of accounts, it does not automatically update the budget. You have to close out and then reopen the budget. So make sure everything's on your chart of accounts before you do this.
Even if you have clicked on inactive or hide, there's a button somewhere in that chart of accounts where you can make accounts inactive.
If you make accounts inactive, it will not show up on the budget.
Okay.
So if you want to try and clean it up and make some inactive for a time being, that's fine. This is actually how I clean up the chart of accounts for a lot of people every year, is when we have a new budget, and as the budget lines fall off, I'll go to the chart of accounts and I'll make them inactive. So that's how I actually use this to kind of keep the chart of accounts cleaned up. But to create a new budget, you hit create new budget. You say what year it is that you want to use, and then you have your choice of profit and loss or balance sheet. If you're a nonprofit, or if you're working off of grants, you're probably going to use the profit and loss, because that's where your budget is originating from. It's going to be your income and expense accounts. And then you just hit next. And then here, a lot of times if you're a nonprofit, you're going to be classing, and this is going to be your operational budget. So you're going to, in this case, I'll go ahead and I'll do it. I'll hit class, and then we'll hit next, and we're going to create a budget from scratch. You can create the budget from the previous year's actual data.
Will you click on that? I'd like to see that.
What it's going to do is it's going to pull all the data from last year and make your budget those numbers. So
then you have to change the numbers?
Right. and it didn't do it. That's awesome. Usually what it'll do is, oh, because we have this grant on here. I wonder if it's not set up in this one. On the nonprofit ones that I do, we usually have budgets for the grants, and then we have budgets for the class, for operational. And what it does, if you create the budget from the last year's data, is it'll go ahead and it'll pull all the data from that class from the previous year, and it drops it into the budget for you. It's okay to do it that way, but you have to go and change all the numbers anyway, because very rarely is your budget going to be your expenses from the previous year. So here's what you do. You can either do one every month. You know, if you have $5,000, you can go ahead and divide it by 12 and then put all that in there. And to do it easy, because you don't have to want to do your thing, you can do 5,000 divided by 12 and then hit tab. And there's a way to make it go across. Or if it's down here at the bottom. You can't see because it's not on the screen. There's going to be a button down here at the bottom that says, that'll say, you know, make this number go all the way across, so you don't have to type in that number for the entire row. I wonder if I can do it this way. I can't get down there. I'm sorry.
But if you just choose to do the annual total and not January, February, March, April, May, June, July, you know, without doing it monthly.
Yeah, you can do that. You just put it in the first month. You just put it in the first month, because then what happens is when you come over here to your budgets and you want to do your budget versus actual, we had the budget in here. So here's what happens is you have each month, and on your first month it shows the budget, the second month it shows that there's no budget. But what you can do is, if you just do total only on here, you have your entire year here, and then here's your budget, and then here's where you know, if you were over or under on your budget, and then here's your percentage. Some people don't like the percentage, I don't really care. If you don't want the percentage on there, you go up here to customize report, and you just take off the percentage, and then you hit OK, and now your percentage is gone. Or you can do it, you know, if you want the percentage, but you don't want the dollar difference. You can make it just like any other report. We can make it look any way that we want. So.
And you did that from planning and budgeting.
Yeah, if you go up to company, or if you go up to company, and you go to planning and budgeting, you can set up your budgets. I don't really use, some people use these. I don't really use these too much. I use budgets a lot. But that's how you set up your budget. And you can set it up on a calendar year or fiscal year. It just depends on how your company is set up in QuickBooks. But I do these are actually for the board meetings every month for nonprofits. I do these every month. So, and then I always make sure that I memorize it. So some people, like, you know, if they want this to be, you know, larger type or whatever, because if you get to some of them, I mean, it's really small. When you get on your paper, it gets really small. So, and again, if you want to report cash or accrual, you just change it here under customers report.
So the dates that you put into that will, and if you then create the profit and loss statement from on an accrual basis, anything that you've added, for instance, if somebody pays me in January for the entire year, and the year actually ends, the fiscal year ends June 30th, it will show that last 6 months in accounts.
It's going to show it. It's going to show it under accounts receivable, And what you should do at the end of your fiscal year is you should move whatever it is that they paid in advance. You should do a journal entry to move it from accounts receivable up to prepaid expenses.
So it doesn't do it, you have to do a journal entry?
You have to do a journal entry to do it yourself.
Okay.
I mean, if you're being audited, they're gonna catch that. You know, if you're a nonprofit, you need to move that up there. You should do it yourself before the audit comes. And that's one of the things that they look for that in your AR. If you have a $5 million budget, and we're talking $500, they'll probably pass on it. But I mean, if we're talking $50,000, yeah, they're gonna find that.
So how does a layperson know how to do a journal entry?
That's why you always have a tax professional. And that's why if you have any questions, you call them.
Yeah.
And whether that be your CPA that does your taxes at the end of the year, and you just call them and you ask them. If you're a nonprofit, you probably either have someone on staff that knows, hopefully, that knows what they're doing, or that person on staff that's a bookkeeper. They might not necessarily know that, but that person should have someone that they can call and ask questions. Again, if you have an auditor, they want to help you at the end of the day, and you can call them and ask them. When I get audited, if they have any other journal entries, what I do is I make sure that the next year, in addition to the journal entries that I make, I always go back and look at the journal entries that the auditor makes and see if I need to do any of those again. For journal entries, like I said, you can either, if you go to QuickBooks, they have people, you can search for people that can help, or you can call me.
I have we had a construction account and an operation account. And
Okay.
so the construction account, of course, you don't use very often. We only use it for capital expenses.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'll go dormant occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll put $5 in one account and take it out of the other. Well, I don't know how I did it, but I still have something showing up on the balance sheet that I know needs a journal entry.
Okay.
But we tried doing a journal entry and it made it worse instead of better. So we just reversed what we did and quit.
Okay. Well, journal entries are actually kind of easy. I say that, but then I have to redo them all the time because I always flip my journal entries. So to make journal entry, you come up to company and you come down to make journal entries. If you know, that's great. If you know what you want to do, that's fantastic. These are old ones that they had in here. This is a sample company. Everybody, I think, knows depreciation expense. If you're a nonprofit, you either do it monthly or annually. If you're doing it monthly, you can go ahead and memorize this transaction because you're probably going to have the same one throughout the year unless you have some items that are reaching the end of their life. We have, some insurance in here. There's a lot of different reasons why you would use journal entries. A lot of people aren't very comfortable using journal entries, but you always can go and make a journal entry, and then if it's not what you want it to be, you just go and delete it or you go and change it. The way I do journal entries is I know what it is that I want to do, or I think I do, and then I go and I make the journal entry. I check the reports right away to make sure I made it right, instead of, sometimes, like I said, sometimes I flip them. So it always helps to put in a memo, because I will guarantee you 6 months from now, when you're looking at your reports and you see this journal entry there, you're going to go and say, well, why in the world did I do that? So
Right.
Always put in a memo for your journal entries. But yeah, that's for a bank account. Are you reconciling the bank statements?
Yes, and it shows up every month, but it's an outstanding transaction. And anytime I try to get rid of it, it changes the checking account balance and makes it not balanced.
Well, if it's showing up
With
as
the bank statement,
if it's showing up as an uncleared transaction,
it is.
you should be able to just delete it. And yeah, it's going to change the balance in QuickBooks, but if it's not reconciling anyway, it should be okay on your
It
reconciliation.
is reconciling until I change that. I'll show you.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it might be, something that.
Okay. The other thing that they introduced, I think they introduced it for 2015, is you can move this taskbar up here. the way that you do that is you can keep it on the top, you can put it on the left, or you can hide it. I actually use this icon bar all the time. You don't have to use it. Everything that's up here is basically just a shortcut. So if you know the other ways to do it, you don't have to even use it. So if we hide it, it just totally goes away and you have more on your screen. You can use the left icon bar, which puts all of your shortcuts and everything over here. Oh, here we go. My screen, of course, is too big, so it's not going to work. Or we can keep it at the top. I use the one on the top. You can use whatever one you want, or you can hide it. It doesn't really matter. To change the things that are up here, so I use chart of accounts all the time, and you see there's not a chart of accounts up here. You right-click, and you go to Customize Icon Bar, and you hit Add over here, and you can put whatever it is that you want on there. Here's chart of accounts, and then we'll hit OK. Make sure you hit OK instead of Escape, because if you hit Escape, it won't save. I think my thing here is...
Wow.
A lot on there, don't they? So, and then you just hit your chart of accounts, and there's your chart of accounts. The other one that I use all the time is I use the Find Transactions. Okay. Those are the two I use the most, are the Find Transactions and the chart of accounts. But you can take, like you saw me just take all of those off. When you first get QuickBooks, they put all these things on there and you don't use any of them. So you can take them all off, and as you use it, find the ones that you use a lot. Those are the two that I use the most, are the chart of accounts and the Find Transactions. So, and then I think I showed everybody this not too awful long ago. Like this, so we have some more room here. You can do, you can use this as a calculator. So if you do 5 plus 5 plus 5 divided by 3, and then you just hit enter, you can use it as a 10 key over here. It doesn't, you don't get a tape at the end of the day. But if you have a grant, or if you want to, let's say we have $125 here, and we want to split this between 2 accounts, and we want to split half and half. So let's say half of it's auto insurance and half is disability insurance. And I don't really feel like doing the math. You go over here and you hit that and you divide it by 2, and it does the math for you. And there's how you put in your different accounts if you have a split down there. Or if you have different grants, like if half of it's going to be applied to this grant and half of it's going to be applied to that grant. Or if you have a rental business and you buy grass seed and you use it on 2 different houses, so half of it's applied to this house and half of it's applied to that house. Or if you have different store locations, you also use class for store locations, and you buy something, half of it's going to this store and half of it's going to that store. You can do that as well. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was, and I almost got there, your reports. We already talked about memorizing. They now have this awesome thing that I use all the time. You can go ahead and print it to your printer, but you can also now save it as a PDF instead of printing it and then, or you're printing it and then scanning it. You can now just you can save it as a PDF. And
You could easily put that up in the cloud someplace too, that you could keep that in a...
Absolutely. See, I use Dropbox, so you can save it as PDF. You can also email it from here now. You can email it as Excel or PDF. The only thing is if you email it like this, you can't you can't change the name of the file, and it just says it's an Excel file generated from QuickBooks, instead of saying, you know, consulting business balance sheet, you know, but you can change the body of the email or anything like that. Excel, we're going to create a new worksheet. I use this all the time. You can create a total new worksheet, or if you have a sheet and you're just updating it every single month, like you're doing your monthly reports, and you want to keep all of your Excel files in one thing, you can put that in here as well. And just hit export. And now we have this in Excel. And you can actually change, I don't change these numbers, but you can change this on here. So let's say that you have your balance sheet and you want everything on here, but you don't want your line of credit on here. It just works just like a regular, you know, just like a regular Excel sheet. So you don't have to go and type everything over in Excel. You can go ahead and save this or do whatever it is that you want, because, like I said, it's in Excel. The only thing that you have to remember is, you can't really see it on here, but it does pull over all of the headers. So if you want to change that, you're going to have to change it within Excel. And if you have some of the larger sheets, it has the windows the panes frozen. And if you try and change the headers on there, it has to unfreeze the panes and you'll lose the formatting. So that's the only thing that you have to remember about the larger reports when you're doing that in Excel. See, this one has a pane frozen here. So if we go to do, oh gosh, I'm going to have to remember how to do it now. How to change the headers.
In Excel?
Yeah. It takes me a minute to find it all the time.
I think page layout.
Page layout?
You sure it's not in your home? Is it not under home where you do the?
I think it's page, still think it's page layout. Now, does it say headings right there?
Yeah, it's column headings.
Okay, then go to view.
It always takes me forever to find all these. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter. So, but if you do want to change the header in here, it's easier to change it in QuickBooks first before you export it to Excel. Because if you do it in here, you're going to lose the formatting.
Go back to home just for giggles. And then go to format.
Format?
See its format under insert and delete to the top right. There you go. Shoot. I know the answer. Yes.
I would have thought it would have been here.
I still think it's in page layout. I knew it was in page layout.
Here's where you change it though, if you want to change it in Excel. Don't ask me how I got there, because now I forgot.
It was under page setup.
Yeah, it's in page layout and it's under,
Sheet options.
Yeah.
Sheet options. There you go. See, I'll forget that now. So. But that is really helpful to go to Excel. I do that a lot too. Oh yeah. Everybody should back up their data all the time, even if you keep it on the cloud, because if your data gets corrupted, it's not going to help you if it's on the cloud. So to do that, you go to File, and you go to Backup Company. And this is also if you have one that your data is corrupted and you want to restore it, you can do that here as well. But we're going to create a local backup. And they have online backup. The online backup is where you have through QuickBooks. That's a subscription. You have to pay for it. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. I don't do that because I'm really cheap and I don't want to pay for things. So I always do local backup. And then you browse and you put it wherever it is that you want it.
So if you've got one of those external, terabyte hard drives, you could
you could either do it on an external drive. I actually put mine on Dropbox because even though both the file, the actual file, and the backup are both on Dropbox, it's okay because you can restore any files. Well, if you pay for it, you can restore the files that are deleted. But the reason why we're doing the backups is if your data gets corrupted. So it's okay in that instance to go ahead and put on the same thing. I would not, if you keep everything on your C drive, I would not keep your backup on your C drive as well, because if your computer crashes, your backups aren't really going to help you because that also has crashed. So either a thumb drive or an external hard drive, or keep it on the cloud somewhere. But it is okay to keep both the actual file and the backup. If it's not, as long as it's not on your laptop or your desktop, it's okay to put the file and the backup on the same thing. So you just pick wherever it is that you want to where you want to back it up. Just put it here. I always add the date and the time of the backup to the file name, so that way you can tell when it is that you backed it up. And I also limit the number of backup copies to 3. These are the regular settings, but that's just so you don't have, I do weekly backups on everything, so that's so I don't have 20 gazillion files in there that takes up all of my room. I do not. You can. I don't, because I'm going to show you what I do. Remind you to back up when you close the company file every X number of times. What that means is when you hit File and then Close, it'll say, hey, you need to back up your data. Well, okay, if I'm sitting there closing the company, it means I have something else to do, and I don't have time to back it up anyway. So I always do a complete verification. And then this says I'm saving it on my C drive, and gosh, that's not safe. That's why I always say use. Okay, this is what I do is I save it now, and I schedule future backups. And what you can do here is you can save up, I do this at like 2 in the morning is when I have this scheduled for when I'm sleeping sometimes. It'll go ahead and it'll back it up for you automatically, so you don't have to do anything. You don't have to remember to back it up. You can schedule it. You just hit new down here and you say, company backup. You tell it where you want it to go, just like we did before. Your number of backup copies to keep. You can put, anything in here. And then here's where I do mine every week on every single company that I have. You can do it as many or as little times as you want. I don't know. I mean, I'm in everything every week. I don't know if everybody else is. Some people only update every month. Some people, this is set at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's every 1 week. You can do it, any day. And if you have a password on the company or your password on your computer, you can store it here. So sometimes it'll make you log into your computer, and you need the password. So that's what that's for. If you don't do that, and what'll happen is when you open up your computer on Tuesday, is it'll start the backup as soon as you open it up. And it just runs in the background. It takes like maybe 5 minutes, not even that long. And then you hit OK. Go ahead and do that.
So if you had 3 up there for the backups, when it starts again on the 4th one, does it delete the
It deletes the oldest one. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It deletes the oldest one. So here, and now we have the scheduled backup, and it tells you the next time it's going to do it, which is the 21st, which is next Monday. So let's remove that because I don't really want to do a backup on a sample company. And then you just hit finish. And now it's doing the backup that we just scheduled, which since this is a sample, I'm hoping it doesn't take very long. So.
Karen, what do you think's the most typical places that people make mistakes on with QuickBooks that are doing it themselves?
Data entry. I think the data entry would probably be the most common one. And whether that be you're putting things in the wrong account, or you're not doing your journal entries because number one, you either don't know, or number two, you're not comfortable. I know a lot of people that just are not comfortable with journal entries for some reason that really scares them. And that's fine, you know, that's normal. The only reason why I do them all the time is because I have to do them all the time. So, you know, if I don't have to do them all the time, I probably wouldn't like them either. And like I said, I do mine backwards all the time. You know, so I still do them wrong, and I do them almost every single day. So the other thing that I would say is when you're setting up your invoices, when you invoice people, and let's say we're going to add a new thing, to know when things are taxable or non-taxable, that would be one, and to manage it in managing your sales tax. But when you add an item here in the invoices, to make sure it goes to the correct income accounts. So again, it's still kind of data entry, but then I know that I always recommend every month run your reports and make sure that everything is where it's supposed to be. Because if you wait until the end of the year and you take it to your CPA, it's going to be a big, huge cluster. Or if you're maintaining it every month when you're doing your bank reconciliations, it's a lot more manageable, and you catch errors a lot sooner, and your reports are always correct.
Can you go ahead and schedule, if you do online banking, let's say, you know your taxes are due, if you're a small business, you know, your quarterly taxes or whenever you want to pay them. Can you go ahead and schedule that so you don't make yourself fall behind and not doing that?
If you're doing like estimated taxes?
Yes.
You can schedule that through EFT, yes. You can schedule that. I know they let you schedule out. They let you schedule out a whole bunch of payments, and then they throw you a whole bunch of error messages, but you just click through the error messages. As far as QuickBooks, you can go ahead and memorize those transactions, but they won't actually do it for you. If we're talking about sales tax, you can do reminders in QuickBooks, and it'll tell you, you know, you'll get a pop-up on there, hey, it's time for your sales tax, or hey, it's time to do your payroll taxes, or, you know, hey, it's time to invoice, you know, this person. I personally don't use them. I use lists. I do it through Outlook. So I already have it in there, and then I check it off as I do it, but I know you can do it in QuickBooks.
Well, I know you can schedule to send out an invoice. I just wonder if you could schedule payments, because there's some bills that you don't want to turn off the power.
You can schedule the payments, but you still actually have to do them. It won't actually, you know, do it for you.
So does it, if you have it scheduled, does it send you a pop-up when you bring up QuickBooks?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you, what happens is when you have your memorized transactions and it's time to enter them, what happens is it comes, there's a big screen that comes up that says, hey, you have, you know, these 6 memorized transactions. Do you want to enter them now? And you either hit yes or no. And then, you know, if you hit yes, it just goes ahead and enters those transactions for you. And if you hit no, it doesn't enter them for you. And then every single time you open up that company again, it brings up that same box. Hey, do you want to enter these transactions? So.
Gotcha.
So I think that's it.
You have any questions? I can't think of anything. So, did that come up with that? Did you get everything that's on your list?
Mm-hmm.
I do have a question about the invoicing. Where we charge for copies and postage, we can put that in there as an item, right?
Absolutely. I do the same thing.
We can go in and change it every month.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. What I do on that is, you know, this right now, what I'm doing is I'm creating a new line item on there on the invoices. I don't really have put it under any income line because it doesn't, and those are non-taxable. So here's our copies reimbursement. I don't know if you do, we'll do August, so, gosh.
Do you put that on with the rent bill for the month?
Okay, and then, so let's say that they did 213 copies, and it is 8 cents a copy. I just made up a number. Or you could do, so we have one that is color, and the other one is black and white, copies are reimbursed.
Didn't think about that, because you do want to charge extra for the, if they're making color copies.
Yeah.
So you can just add those to the monthly invoices before you send them out? Is
Yeah,
that what
sure,
you're doing?
and you can memorize this one, and then, every single month, go in and then you would change, how many. And, if you go to print, you can preview to see what it'll look like. So, that, this is what's actually gonna print off. And if you don't like anything on here, if you come, oh gosh, I can't see it.
But can you add that to their rent invoice and have it all,
Absolutely.
have everything merged into one invoice?
Yep, absolutely.
But I mean, if you had generated that every month invoice.
Well, what you need to do is you have to create the initial invoice, and then once you create the initial invoice, you memorize that invoice, and then every month, you go in there and you say that you want to, you have to open up the invoice, and then so you would have to change this from August to September to October to November, but the actual invoice is already there.
Okay.
And then, you can email the invoice so you don't have to print them off and, do whatever. Email them all the time.
So if you have an old version of QuickBooks, and once it's past 5 years old, you can't email things from QuickBooks because.
Sure you can. You can. The only thing that's different, and I have clients that use really.
We have like a 05 or an 07 version.
Yeah, they're still in like QuickBooks 95. So you can use it, but the problem is if something happens and something breaks or something doesn't work right, QuickBooks they don't support it anymore.
Well, I tried to email the profit and loss statement to the board members from QuickBooks,
Okay.
and it said that it doesn't support QuickBooks doesn't support it anymore, and can't email it in that format.
It might have been the format, but it should have still worked.
I'll show you.
Okay.
Could you converted that to a PDF and
Well,
send
I
it?
actually converted it to an Excel
Okay.
file, and then I did it like that, but, it's not as pretty in an Excel file as it is in the QuickBooks file.
Right. You can try printing it as a PDF and then setting it as a PDF. It should, all of the functionality still should work, it's just they just don't support anymore. You might want to, if it's set to email through the QuickBooks system and it won't work, you might want to switch it so it sends through Outlook if you use Outlook. Because you have a choice. The default is when you send emails through QuickBooks is it uses their servers. You can change that to make it use your Outlook instead.
So how do you change that in the email?
Pretty sure it's under preferences. Send forms, you go to preferences,
Oh, I
send
see.
forms.
Okay.
See, you have your webmail, your Outlook, or your QuickBooks email.
Okay.
Now, if you're using the QuickBooks email, yeah, it's not gonna work because they don't support it. But if you're using webmail or Outlook, that should work.
I bet the default's wrong.
So,
You can just pay
Wow.
Karen $65.
Yeah. I'm gonna put you on speed dial like I have Sandy. Cindy.
No, she just walks down the hall.
That's
Do
okay.
you have any other questions? We pretty much went through.
Well, I probably do, but what I have learned is that I need to look at the settings, the way all of our stuff is set up, and then,
I can help you with your
Check for
budgets. If you have that
defaults.
budget, I can help you with the first one.
yeah.
Because once you do one of them, you kind of got it. But it's
Okay.
just that first one that sucks. So,
Yeah, it does. I actually just exported it to Excel and then I hid all of the, or made inactive in the chart of accounts.
mhm.
And then created the budget by exporting it to Excel.
Yeah.
And the formulas work.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, but then in order to run your reports, they'll save you a lot of time. If you get your budget in QuickBooks, and then you do monthly reports.
I do.
Okay, if you get your budget in QuickBooks and then you do it every month, it takes like 2 seconds. So,
You make it sound so easy.
only because I've been doing it for so long. I've done everything wrong, so I know what not to do.
Well, that's how you learn sometimes, by getting smacked on the hand.
So,
Well, I can't think of anything else. Thank you for coming,
thank you for having me.
and thanks for everybody that tuned in.